The tiger was quiet and majestic. Alex walked slowly, listening carefully to every sound. He was a young gamekeeper, but he already knew that the silence in the forest was deceptive. After a series of nighttime shots reported to the local hunting office, he was sent to comb through the northern section, where few people ever ventured. The snow crunched under his feet, and frosty mist hung in the air. Suddenly, Alex stopped. A thin, almost plaintive squeak came from deep in the forest. He froze. It was not a bird's voice or the wind. Someone was calling for help. He slowly moved toward the sound, pushing through the branches. The squeak grew louder. Alex pushed aside the dry brushwood and saw a tiny red fox cub trembling in a crevice between the roots of a huge fallen pine tree. Its fur was ruffled, and one paw was strangely twisted. It was clearly unable to get out on its own. Alex crouched down. "Calm down, little one. I'll help you." He began to carefully rake away the branches and snow, approaching the animal. But at that very moment, something changed. The forest seemed to fall silent. A light, crunching step sounded behind him. Alex turned around and froze for a moment. 20 meters away, in a clearing between the trees, stood a tigress. Her eyes were fixed on the fox cub, her body tense. One leap, and she would be right next to him. Alex stood motionless. His gaze met the tigress's eyes. They were huge, amber, piercing, as if they could read his thoughts. The snow-covered fur on her shoulders rose with each breath. She didn't growl or hiss. She just stared, and that was enough to make the gamekeeper's heart sink with fear. He knew that running away was foolish. He knew that screaming was useless. All he had now was his body, his determination, and the tiny living creature at his feet, which he had no intention of giving up. "I won't give him to you," he whispered, more to himself than to her. He slowly dropped to one knee, trying not to make any sudden movements. The fox cub was trembling, its eyes looking up, full of fear and hope. Alex carefully slipped his hand between the roots and pulled the baby into his arms. His heart was pounding like crazy. The tigress took a step forward. The snow crunched softly under her paw. One more step, and she would be almost upon them. Alex felt every muscle in his body tense. He covered the fox cub with his body, pressing him to his chest. The wind carried the scent of a wild beast to him. Warm, strong, predatory. But the tigress did not pounce. She stopped a few steps away. Only a few steps, a few seconds separated them. And suddenly, she turned away. Slowly, majestically, she stepped aside, casting a last glance at the man and the red ball in his arms. In an instant, her silhouette disappeared among the tree trunks like a ghost. Alex couldn't move for a long time. Then he exhaled and felt the fox cub trembling under his jacket. He was alive, and now he was safe. Alex slowly rose from his knees. The little fox trembled in his arms, clutched to his chest as if it were his last hope. The snow intensified. The silence of the forest was filled with a light howl of wind, penetrating through. He knew. It was almost 10 kilometers from here to the cordon, and a blizzard was beginning. But he couldn't leave the baby. His little body was too fragile, his breathing barely audible. Alex wrapped him in the lining of his jacket, pressing him against his chest, trying to keep him warm. He knew that every minute of delay was a risk to his life. Even an adult animal could die in these conditions, let alone a cub. He moved on, picking his way through drifts and thick branches. The forest suddenly became hostile. The usual paths disappeared under the snow. The compass in his phone malfunctioned from the cold. Alex walked by memory. Sometimes he looked back, still not believing that the tigress had really left. A couple of times he stopped, to correct the fox cub's shelter, to warm him with his breath, to make sure that he was still breathing. He whispered something soothing to him, as if the beast could understand. At one point, Alex's foot slipped and he almost fell, hitting his shoulder on a snow-covered rock. The pain echoed in his side, but he didn't even moan, just held the baby tighter. A few more steps, 100 more. He didn't know how much time had passed. Just the snow, the cold, and the lump of red in his jacket for which he kept walking. Alex's strength was draining away. His legs were wobbly, his breathing hitched from cold and fatigue. He could no longer feel his fingers, but he still held the fox tightly, not letting the frost touch his weak body. For a moment, he thought he would just fall into the snow and not get up. But there was light ahead. Through the branches swaying in the blizzard, he spotted a dim flicker, a yellow, warm glow. Alex blinked, not believing his eyes. A forest hut, old, shabby, but with a working stove. He knew this place, a hunting lodge, abandoned many years ago, but sometimes used by foresters. He almost crawled to the door. His hand shook as he struggled to remove his glove and pushed open the wooden sash. A creak. The smell of ash and dry boards. He tumbled inside, nearly passing out. The stove was cold, but wood lay in the corner. Alex knelt down, put the fox cub in the shelter of an old blanket, and struggling with freezing fingers, began to build a fire. Every flick of a match seemed like a fight for life. The fire danced. Warm light flooded the corners of the room. Alex sat down next to him, pulling the fox closer, covering him with a blanket, gently massaging his tiny paws. The fox moved. His nose twitched. His eyes opened slightly. Alex smiled for the first time that day. He didn't know how it would end, but the main thing was that they were both alive. And they had a chance now. 2 days passed. The blizzard had subsided. Snow was falling from the branches outside the windows of the hunting hut, and there was silence in the air. Alex didn't go out. He devoted all his time to taking care of the fox. He fed it warm water from the flask lid, carefully fed it mashed fish from the stock, rubbed its paws, covered it with an old cloak. The fox was weak, but breathing evenly. Sometimes he squeaked softly when Alex touched him, not in pain, but as if in response to attention. A subtle but strong bond had formed between them. Alex lay next to the improvised bed, keeping his eyes on him. Sometimes he read aloud, an old shabby book left by someone in the cabin. It was a story about a man and a wolf, and it sounded surprisingly appropriate. On the third day, the little fox lifted his head, hesitantly, with a trembling neck. Alex froze. Small eyes, weakened by pain, looked straight into him. "Hello?" he exhaled, and for the first time in a long time, he smiled genuinely. It was a small miracle in the middle of a big, indifferent forest. Later, Alex carried the animal in his arms to the porch of the hut. The air was fresh, the sun was breaking through the pines, and the snow was sparkling, as if the forest itself was celebrating their victory. The fox sucked in the frosty air with his nose and snuggled up to Alex. He knew that when the little one grew stronger, he would have to let him go. But not today. Today was the day of a lifetime. A few weeks passed. The forest, which once seemed cold and merciless, was now home to Alex and the fox cub. Each day was filled with small victories. The baby was now running through the snow, playing and exploring the world around them, while Alex watched with quiet pride and love. They had become more than just rescuer and rescued. They had become true friends, connected by an invisible thread that could not be broken. Alex knew that the moment of farewell would soon come. A wild life awaited the fox cub, and he would have to let him go back to the forest. But today, on this first sunny dawn after a long winter, Alex didn't think about sadness. He watched the little fox running among the pines, free and strong, and realized rescue is not just an act of mercy. It was the beginning of a new life, full of hope and possibilities. With a smile on his face, Alex raised his gaze to the blue sky, breathed deeply of the fresh air, and whispered, "Live, little friend, live freely." And the forest answered him with a whisper of wind, a promise that this story was just beginning,